Wamajika, everyone. On behalf of the VLGA, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country on whose lands we meet today. In particular, I would like to recognise the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and pay our respects to their elders past, present and future, and to their cultures. As a statewide organisation, we also acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Victoria and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and community. Thank you for joining the VLGA and our partners, Welcoming Cities and the Scanlon Foundation, for the launch of these two exciting projects. I would like to acknowledge my councillor colleagues who are here today. Anthea Hancock's CEO of the Scanlon Foundation, who they have funded the Stepping Forward program. I believe Anthea is online. And Vivian Nguyen, AM, the Chairperson of the Victorian Multicultural Commission. Welcome also to those of you who are joining us online. You will just have to trust us that the councillor stories in the handbook that we are launching this evening are fantastic. I'm told it will be online on the VLGA website from early next week.
I have to tell you, Councillor Denise, that everyone's told me that they're having a wonderful view. All the people online are very excited to be saying hello to us.
Promoting diversity and inclusion of all kinds in local government is something that the VLGA works hard towards every day. Increasing the participation of culturally diverse Victorians in council decision making is a big part of achieving that and moving towards a level of government that is truly the closest to the people. As a councillor and Deputy Mayor of Whitehall City Council, I represent a municipality where 38.5% of the population were born overseas and 25% were Australian born, with at least one parent born in a non-main English-speaking country. As our demographics and population change, the faces of our elected representatives need to change as well. That's why the VLGA is so proud to be launching these two projects, and I'll hand over now to our CEO, Catherine R, to tell you more about them. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting tonight and their elders past, present and emerging. I would like to acknowledge our moderator of the panel tonight, Vivian, Chairperson of the Victorian Multicultural Commission, and also our panelists who Vivian will introduce shortly. The work of the VLGA focuses on furthering good governance across the local government sector. Our work in this space is constantly evolving, and following the release of our strategic plan in coming months, I look forward to releasing further detail of the next iteration, the next 5-year plan, in the run-up to the 24 council elections. As Denise said, councils should seek to reflect the demographics of their communities. The right to participate in political processes is a fundamental human right, and there is ample evidence to suggest that organisations that embrace diversity are high performing. In regard to the event this evening, the VLGA is delighted to have had a number of opportunities over the past few years to work closely with the Scanlon Foundation on projects which seek to increase the representation of Victorians from emerging and migrant backgrounds in council decision-making processes. In that spirit, we acknowledge the Scanlon Foundation stepping forward was made possible by them by a generous grant that they provided us. Thank you, and we value this commitment from you. Specifically designed for young people from culturally diverse backgrounds in the City of Casey and the City of Whittlesea, Stepping Forward is a unique program for young people who want to be actively involved in local government decision-making in their community. The program is focused on improving leadership capacity and competency, with participants gaining a stronger understanding of civic participation and local government and learning how they can best contribute or progress the change that they wish to create in their community. By supporting the capacity building of young, culturally diverse people in these municipalities, the program aims to equip participants to rebuild community trust and lay out the groundwork for the return of elected representation in 2024. The program will provide an in-depth immersion for up to 12 participants from each council into local issues and local government decision-making, ensuring that participants leave the program with the ability to apply theory to real-life situations. The participants will have access to specialised subject matter experts and local government decision-makers throughout the duration of the program. While learning about core concepts, participants will be supported to undertake a project for change in their municipality, from initial inception to potential council endorsement and implementation. It also gives me an enormous amount of pleasure to officially present to you the Represent Handbook, developed in partnership between VLGA and Welcoming Cities. Welcoming Cities is an initiative of Welcoming Australia and also is supported by the Scanlon Foundation. This booklet is a combination of extraordinary guidance regarding campaigning and getting elected, and even more extraordinary stories from a diverse group of councillors. Thank you to those councillors, some of whom you will hear from shortly, for sharing their very personal journeys. Finally, a sincere thanks to Aileen Ali, CEO, and to Belle Schenk, who's here with us tonight from Welcoming Cities, who collaborated with Deborah Wu and Davey Wilson of the VLGA in the production of Represent. This was a genuine collaboration, and we thank all involved. I would now like to hand over to Vivian, who will introduce you to some of the participants in the Represent Handbook, and we can hear from them in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, and good evening, everyone. I too also would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered for this conversation this evening and pay my respects to the elders past and present. I know in this room here tonight, many of you are fantastic moderators, so I'm not going to pretend that I know how to do this. So when you say, Madam CEO, to introduce the panelists, I'm going to go, that's Joseph. And you can introduce yourself, Joseph. You can say all of that what you want to say about yourself. The same applies to you, councillor, the same applies to you, councillor, and the same applies to you, councillor, okay? So, do we have one more microphone? Yeah, or do we have just this one?
Yeah, we've got that
All
one.
right. So, see, would you pass over to Joseph? But here we go, the Joseph Wellway, councillor from the Hill City Council.
Thank you very much. I'm going to steal that idea for future facilitation of panels. I'll put it back on the participants. I'll be quick. My name is Joseph O'Wheel. I'm a Hume City Councillor. Hume, of course, is in the northern suburbs of Melbourne. So think Broadmeadows and Melbourne Airport, which you've all been through, and Tullamarine, and then all the way up into some of the state's largest growth areas in Craigieburn, Mickleham and Calcalo, where we're forging the new frontier of what is Melbourne between us and Whittlesea Council and Mitchell up there in the north. I'm serving my second term on council after being first elected in 2016 and served as mayor in the first year of this term. By way of cultural background, and I'm very proud of my cultural identity, and I try and share a little bit about it wherever I go. So my family on my father's side came to Australia as refugees in the early 1980s. My father from Iraq. My father left Iraq in 1979 when the Saddam Hussein regime came to power. And our family are indigenous to Iraq. They are Assyrian Christians, which is a predominant minority group in Iraq and other parts of the Middle East. And they started settling here very early in the 80s, in and around Melbourne's northwestern suburbs. And I'll leave it at that, and maybe we can pick up some other things later.
Thank you, Councillor Joseph. We hand it over to Councillor Nasiba Abdullah. There you go.
Thank you very much.
My job.
Yes, and
Yep, so I'll be quick. My name is Seema Abdullah. I'm a councillor at Greater Shepparton City Council. This is my second term, and I was elected in 2016. And originally, I come from Pakistan. I moved to Australia in 2004, and then I moved to Shepparton in 2009. I followed my husband. Everybody asked me, what brought you to Shepparton? And I said, that's my husband. But I cannot complain. I am so lucky and so honored to be here in this position, representing my beautiful Greater Shepparton community. And as most of you know, Greater Shepparton is very multicultural. We have a huge multicultural diversity, and within our council, we are so lucky that that diversity of the community is represented in our council as well. So we have 4 councillors from a diverse cultural background. We have the first Aboriginal councillor in our community, in our council. The councillor Nation Sami, who is also here. You have Councillor Dean Evans, who was just recently elected after there was a vacancy. And I have Councillor Jeff Dawson here, who has come here to support us. So thank you so much. And that's exactly representative of our region and our community. We support each other, we support the diversity, and we celebrate this diversity. So thank you.
There we go. Councillor Ota Olcott from the wonderful City Council.
Thank you, Vivian. Yeah, I will be also quick. My name is Ota Olcott, and I come from Wonowo. Wonowo is Southwest Victoria, to those who may not know. I was in Melbourne when I first came to Australia, and in 2003, I moved to Wonowo. And since then, I was there, but I always came to Melbourne because I feel part of Melbourne. And as part of Chola community, who actually we have the chairperson of Chola community among us here, Japanville, is the community that I come from. We have Fred Stinger also, who is here working with our children, basketball, the CEO, Red Room, helping a lot, helping out the children from the street, to make them realize their future, taking them to USA for a scholarship, basketball scholarship. So it's great to see you here, Fred. Yeah, one may ask, what brought me to here, like, what led me to contest for local government? Yeah, our numbers, I came from South Sudan, I only South Sudanese, and we have only less than 10. We have 3 families in Wonowo, in the community of nearly 40,000. But as part of our campaign, there are many, but we are one. You cannot exclude yourself and think that, I come from somewhere and I don't belong here. No, you belong to this country as a citizen. So when I contested for local government, I was quite confident that I will make it. We were 24 contestants. And it was a bit very challenging through campaign and all this. But I was the second highest votes that the 7 councillors had. So it is in my dream that, you know, we belong here. We are here and we belong to this country. And we should have sense of belonging. And in that, I would like really to encourage the young, especially because the one coming up, we want to encourage them, you know, to take part. Local government is where all starts. The human development, the development itself of the country, all starts from the local government. So if we really pay attention to that arm of the government, that will be really wonderful. We will take our country forward. Thank you.
I had the pleasure of meeting Alto and people at the Australian Cholo community event about a year ago, at one of those cold, windy, wet evenings down at Keysborough. And I was so amazed in the room of maybe 1,000 people. Well, I said, things happening over here, people were lining up to get food. I know with the Vietnamese community, when you've got food, it's all chaotic. It was amazing to see people lining up, quietly getting food and observing the performances of the front. One of the best evenings I've ever had. It was really, really amazing, Diego. Very, very good. Over to you, Councillor Jasmine. Like to introduce yourself, please.
Absolutely, with pleasure. Hi everyone, my name is Councillor Jasmine and I'm also the Mayor of Brookbank City Council. I consider myself a second generation Vietnamese Australian. And so that means like I was born in Australia, but my parents were Vietnamese refugees. We actually met on the boat. And yeah, like I was born in Sunshine Hospital, so it's just very humbling to be, you know, a representative of a community that I grew up in. And I love living in Brookbank. Brookbank is quite huge. We're actually in the northwest of Melbourne, so next to you actually. Think of from Sunshine all the way to Taylor's Lakes. And we're very multicultural. I think we're the second after Greater Dandenong to take in refugees. And I think 2/3 are born overseas, over 160 languages spoken, council's very diverse. Can I give a shout out to Madam Deputy Mayor Tui Dang right there? This is awesome to have a mayor and a deputy mayor from Little together. Like that is astounding. And yeah, I just feel like, especially living in a community like Brookbank where you just feel proud to be yourself. You don't have to act like anybody else and feel comfortable about that. And just see that in our council is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, we gotta be a voice for the people that we relate to. It's important.
I have a bunch of questions to ask you, but I'm sure the audience, you will have plenty of questions as well for the panel. So I'll start with you, Jasmine. Was that an expected election result for you? And what were you thinking when you started to throw your hat in the ring? Were you supported by the relevant party? How did you feel after you won? And what the hell's going on now?
Okay, that's a lot of questions. I'm going to explain, this is actually my first time in council. So, first time elected, was it 2020? That's like nearly a year and a half now. Actually, when I was growing up, I didn't know what council was, actually. But what happened is, I did this community program, and I just kind of said how much this program has changed my life. It's called the Dual Identity Leadership Program, and it's called Dual Identity because it recognizes that, yes, while I am an Australian citizen, I come from a rich cultural ancestral background of being Vietnamese in this instance, so Vietnamese Australian. But I guess growing in Australia, I kind of, it was just hard reconciling both of my Australian and Vietnamese identities, like going to school, kind of have to like survive it. But then doing this cultural program really helped me get in touch with my Vietnamese side. In terms of like, you know how I went to like cultural festivals, but the sense of belonging that I felt after doing this community was just phenomenal. Like I learned the whole history of how my parents came to Australia, and just had that sense of gratitude that I come from a legacy of people who are so resilient and, you know, gotta pay it forward. It's kind of ironic, like my parents escaped from Vietnam because of the politics there. And now, yeah, and I have to say, like, there's no way I could be on council if I did it by myself. Like literally, like a really good recognition to the Vietnamese community who helped support the Joint Installation Program, you know, especially Vivian Ewan is from as well. And what kind of happened was like there was another councillor, he was the former mayor of Yarra, Councillor Daniel Ewan. And I didn't know what a councillor did. I was like, yeah, whatever, cool, you're a councillor, right? But then a couple of people in the program said they wanted to run for council, and I thought, oh, fantastic, I'll support you. And then they said, how about you run with us? I'm like, wow, okay. So it really was a collaborative effort. We all decided to run together, like we weren't supported by a party. But it's just really that grassroots, like the, you know, your cultural community supporting you to be where we are, like, yeah.
That's right. Thank you, Jasmine. It was I had some understanding of it because I watched Jasmine's election and she was on her, we know how we don't know enough about preferences. But Jasmine's had a road card, had no preferences. So it's Jasmine and the rest. Jasmine, do you want to vote for Jasmine? Put number 1 for Jasmine and the rest, however you got a number, the remaining candidates is up entirely up to you. And she got in. Massive number, amazing, very, very amazing. Thank you. When I go over to you, Joseph, on the other side of the panel, we know how challenging the Hume Council has been over the last couple of years in terms of the pandemic. What made you be so forefront in terms of supporting the community, you know, being the voice of the community, being controversial on behalf of the community? What were you thinking? What's in your mind when you were doing all of this? What actually motivated you to do all these things? That ultimately may be difficult for you politically.
It's a very important question and a difficult one to answer in some ways. But I put myself back in my mind to a year ago where I was leading the city most impacted by COVID in the state, and with the lowest vaccination rates in the state at the same time. And obviously that was a recipe for disaster. Unfortunately, during the time I had felt very keenly that some of the public policy responses and public health responses that were being pursued by the state government were not those that were appropriate to address the issues that we were facing in our city. And I recall, Viv, that for quite some time, in writing, we were putting on the table suggestions of what would work in our city and what is case specific and what would generate a different outcome from what we were experiencing. And that really wasn't taken on board. You're dealing with a bureaucracy which has a certain way of doing things, providing advice to the ministerial level, and of course the fact that we were in the middle of a crisis and everyone is responding or trying to respond the best they can in the context of a crisis. And so in those circumstances, and with the diabolical situation that was facing us, it was important to go public, frankly. And that's hard to do at a political level. It's particularly hard to do for those who are members of political parties and on council, but it was very important to do that. And I found very quickly that once we did that, it was a few days, perhaps a week, where we started getting different public policy outcomes. And they were things that I was trying to pursue and calling for along with my colleagues for some time. Things like appointment-free vaccinations, things like interpreters and bicultural workers permanently at centres, a move away from the state-run vaccination hubs and testing clinics to more localised ones that are close to communities, and really, really intensive outreach and engagement with culturally diverse communities who were unfortunately disproportionately impacted by misinformation, fake news, whatever it was that was out there. And we saw immediately that once some of those changes came into place, and credit to the government for taking that on board. I think I did a press conference on, I'm not taking credit for it personally, it's a collective effort, but on a Thursday and on Sunday afternoon, the Premier pretty much announced what we were asking for. And slowly we saw within a month our vaccination rate go from about 30% to something like 80%, an incredible turnaround. How does that link to having people on council who understand their community, understand the cultural diversity, understand what specific public policy outcomes generate better results? Well, it's people who know their community, who live in their community, who can truly represent it. And for me, that's the real importance of having people who are not only local, but reflective of the society in which we live on council. They are able to make public policy and operational strategic suggestions, provide ideas that hopefully will get a better outcome. I think when we talk about cultural diversity, and we talk about diversity at all levels of government in Australia, the question from some parts of the community is, well, it's tokenistic. Why do we have to have cultural diversity? It's not simply, in my view, to reflect the community that we live in and the nation we live in. That's important. But it's because these people have good ideas. They understand their communities. They understand their backgrounds. They're not there for the sake of being a tokenistic example of who exists in the community. It's because each day they bring ideas to the decision-making table that are hopefully good ideas and that are tailored to their community. And in the end, I was very pleased with the outcome that we got in our city and in the northwest North.
Thank you, Joseph. And that's where it really matters. Which really matters, and I segue to you, Councillor Sima, about representation. We know representation matters, and one of those aspects of what Joseph was really touching on. We know also in Chairperson there is good representation at the council. What can you share with us about the experiences and the lessons from Chairperson that we could learn more to other local governments? Thanks.
Thank you. I think the first message from Greater Chairperson should be that be like Chairperson. And great things happen in Greater Chairperson. And it is true, and I totally believe in that because, as I said, you can see the diversity that is reflected in our council. And Chairperson is a very multicultural community. And when I moved, it doesn't happen very often that you get a first-generation migrant Muslim woman to be a councillor, to be a mayor, and to be a deputy mayor, and to be having a seat. So, in saying that, I think I always say that it's more, it reflects less on my own personal capabilities, but it reflects more on our community and the community's willingness and acceptance and that welcoming nature that they treated, where they treat all the multicultural communities as one of them. So I think for Chairperson, I always have this huge respect for the whole community because it is because the mainstream community, it is because the multicultural community that people like us are here. We've got Councillor Shane Sali here, we have Councillor Greg James, we have Denny Adams. All of these have coming from diverse multicultural backgrounds. So that's there. But again, at an individual level, I think it's very important for those of us who have migrated from different parts of the world to have that sense of belonging. And I can truly say that in my case, when I was running for council in 2016, and I had spent 5 years in Melbourne before moving to Chairperson. So I was not born and brought up in Chairperson. Chairperson was a fairly new community for me. But thanks to this community leadership program that I did and that was a pilot program that was started by the Chairperson City Council, and because of my circumstances, I had some time available. So I thought, well, I'll just join this program. And I joined that program, and I can confidently say that that program was a game changer for me. I had not known about my community in so much in depth before that program. So that program gave me the opportunity So again, for your question, I think there are so many lessons to be learned from Greater Chairperson's example. Greater Chairperson is definitely ahead of many municipalities when it comes to multiculturalism and celebration of multiculturalism. So yeah, we like Chairperson.
Well, speaking of the slightly reverse situation in regard to you, Councillor Otter, about Warrnambool, you mentioned that you are, 3 or 4 families of the Cholo community, South Sudanese community in Warrnambool. How do you propose to represent the constituents when they might say representation matters, but there are more people from other different backgrounds? Has it ever come across your mind, or has anyone raised that with you?
Thank you, Viv. I think being one of the community is just not for being a member, but it is actually being productive, being part of the community. Our numbers is less than 10 in a city of nearly 40,000 plus, as I say. But it comes down actually to who you are, what is your contribution to the community, your behaviors, your friends, all this kind of thing. Warrnambool is predominantly Irish and Scottish. You don't see more of other nationalities in Warrnambool. But for me, like coming from Africa and just in the town, somebody different, totally different. It is a responsibility I took upon myself that I need to be part of this community, because sometimes you invite isolation, you invite to be excluded yourself, because if you stay away and not want to be part of that community or any community you are in, then you are isolating yourself, you are excluding even yourself from the community. So my feeling was like, I'm part of this community. I will do whatever I can do, to help promote togetherness and be part of it. So I have been there since day one. I was feeling, this is my place. I need to do anything I can do to help. So I have many friends. I was involved in Rotary Club. I was involved in other social gatherings, social societies. And this is where actually you should start, going out, meeting people, be with them. And because we are human beings, if you don't make yourself known, nobody will, will try to know you. So this is all what I have, because this is I come from that culture where, we share everything. We raise a child as our own, in the community. So all this sharing, all this upbringing, and as Australia is a multicultural country, we came in and we bring in our cultures also. And this is what it means to be multicultural. So we bring our good values, we bring in a good culture into this country to share with others and put it together to make a good country.
That's exactly what we cultures and traditions and share them and make us even richer. I have many, but I'll pause my questions and put it back to the audience. So if you have any questions for the panelists, please raise your hand. Yes. Okay, we have a microphone for.
We don't have an
I don't
extra one.
think I need
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword. So my question was about campaigning. 101 questions to ask you all. But what was the uniqueness of campaigning in COVID? where you couldn't possibly, shake hands and stand outside coffee shops and, knock on doors perhaps. So how was that different to what, perhaps for a second term and for a first term councillor, what were your experiences through
So
COVID?
this would have been the 2020 October. So since you got the microphone, you can continue.
Yeah, it is a privilege also to start with the answer. Actually, the COVID came and shut down everything. Even our social being was threatened by this pandemic. But it takes actually before that, like if you are known before COVID, then it is easy to do things online because we do things online and you are not visible. But people know you because they know you before this situation of COVID. So it is always good, to be upfront. Don't wait for any situation. Don't wait for any things to, I think this is what happened really. I did my campaign online, but I was known also to the people. They know me, and it was much easier to just go for.
I'm going to hand over to Steve.
Thank you. So, look, campaigning in COVID, I would say that, if you're a person who is able to find opportunities in challenges, so there were some good opportunities because, especially for women and for young women, I could see that COVID actually, there was a lot of fear that COVID would disadvantage those communities and especially women. But what we have seen is that it actually didn't go so bad because of our technologies through Zoom and through social media. I think they were able to reach a much larger section of the population, which perhaps was not possible doing on-site and through face-to-face communication. So there were definitely some advantages and some positives out of it. And I think everybody was in the same kind of scenario. So it's not as if it disadvantaged some people more than others. But it was up to us and to individuals to make best use of the given circumstances. So I would say that yes, it was different, but in some at some levels it did have some advantages. Like in Zoom, you can have such a bigger audience through Zoom, and that's what some candidates did very smartly. Yeah. I hope I've answered your question.
It's a good question. I mean, if we compare and contrast, traditionally, if you're running for council, you need to knock on doors. First time around 2016, every councillor who was elected, at least at our council, in terms of being a new councillor and had not been on council before, did that hard work of knocking on as many doors as possible and meeting people, going to sporting events, community events, cultural events, places of worship. 2020 was much different, obviously. I mean, in our case, we had to rely very heavily on expensive marketing materials, flyers, letters, all of that stuff that needed to go to people's homes to reach people, and of course investing in social media, as my colleagues have mentioned. But for me, I think some people who run for council make the mistake of thinking that running for council is their first foray into community life. For me, I think of running for council as being the culmination, in some ways, of years of active engagement in community, in various forms, whether you're part of a cultural group or Rotary or an arts group or a sporting group. It is those people, I think, who are ready to represent their community because they've done the hard yards. And COVID or not, restrictions or not, it's those people who, in our case, got elected because people already know them. They already have those networks and relationships in community. And so I often say that to young people and anyone else in the community who approach me and say, look, I want to run for council. What advice can you give? And I'd say, well, take 4 years to join every group and committee that exists in the community, get actively involved, and you've just, almost written and paved your pathway to being elected quite easily in a few years' time. In my case, in my ward, I had 27 people run, and of those 27, very many of them, to be brutally honest, no one ever seen or heard of, and that they're not the people who eventually got elected, unfortunately. So I think, that's the advice I try and give, that you can do away with these sort of things that come up, whether it's COVID or other things, by ensuring that those, people who are running are already well-known faces and actively involved in the community.
Whoa, like, you're talking a really important point, Jason. Like, it's like, why do you want to run for council? It should be because, like, you want to have a bigger impact in the community. Like, especially if you're the type of person who like volunteers, kind of involved, you want to get bigger impact. That's why you should go into council. It's not about being popular, being liked, because not everyone's going to like what you're going to do. Not everyone's going to like a change that you're going to create. And that was a scary thing. Like, it was actually scary for me to put my hand up to run the council.
Yours was the first one, right?
Yeah. Like, let it be COVID. It was just scary to put my hand up and publicly put my name out there on the nomination sheet. Because I've done it before. But I think it goes through the point, like, I think a lot of us here, it's like, first we have to have the courage to see the ability in ourselves to even run for council. That's the first thing. And, likewise, I'm so lucky that I had, a lot of supportive friends and people in the community who saw that potential in me to tap on my shoulder multiple times, actually, to encourage me to run for council. So that's definitely the first step before you even, like, go out there. And I feel like with the COVID, I don't know any different because this is my first time around council, but I think it just kind of shows you, like, how connected to the community are you if you're running in a COVID pandemic? Because it's going to really rely on people, perhaps within your 5-kilometer radius, to come out and show up for you. You can't rely on your friends on the other side of town. Yeah, so if you're already the type of person that is really connected to your community, it's going to be so much easier to campaign. Like, I was like, hey, school peeps, catch you up in a while. I never have to catch up since uni, but hey, I'm going to run for council. And just like you were saying, actually it was refreshing. People wanted to get out there, even their 5K, walk around, enjoy the neighborhood, see what's available for them. And it was kind of like, wait, energetic, we're putting our faces around the shopping strips. It was fun, it was fantastic. And you know what? You don't have to go to the door knocking. You just put your face in the letterboxes. It was a great excuse to get your steps up too. So it was actually quite fun. So it was really challenging in the sense of, like, yes, you can't talk to people face to face, but it was still really, it was kind of a bonding activity for the, your friends, your volunteers, your community members to get together for, and the beautiful thing about it is, like, you can see the results, right? The combination of all our efforts has resulted in, a more diverse council. And here's the thing, like, I just want to really shout out to, it's so important that you have a support network when you run for council, because it's really daunting and challenging to do it on your own. Like I said, it takes a whole village to raise a child, but maybe also a whole village to get a person elected, eh? From that Joy into Leadership program, there were 5 of us who ran for council. Like, we did it all alone. So there was me, the mayor of Maribyrnong, Anthony Tran, and then Claudia Nguyen, she's on Yarra Council. And then there's also 2 other candidates. They didn't make it, but they were very close. So in Brimbank, there was also Longbu Tran. He was very active in the Vietnamese community of Australia, the Victorian chapter. And also Judy Dohan, who is superb, very just all about justice. And look, it just goes to show, right? It took 5 of us to run the council, and then 3 of us got elected. So you really have to throw your shot, and it takes a whole community to support it. That's why it's so important. Like, all of us here today, we have a responsibility to really empower each other and support the next generation. And sometimes it also takes us stepping aside and going, hey, have you thought about it? I want to support you. Take the place. That's what I like.
Next time as a chairperson of the Victoria Multicultural Division, Jeff. All right, so I've got Sheena, and then we'll go to Shabnam, and then to legal. All right, Sheena.
So my question's for Seema. I've just quickly read your profile. Very impressive and well done for going to London School of Economics. And yeah, I think it's phenomenal that you've also worked as a senior consultant for IBM, but so I'm just noting that because I think that's fantastic. But my question is, you spoke about, you broke down us and them lines. I'm just keen to understand what strategies you use to get the community to, see you for who you are, and still be your authentic self.
Thank you. That's a very good question because look, to run for council, I think the most important thing that you need to have is to have that genuine and authentic commitment to your community. And that is something that it has to be in you. Nobody can sort of transfer that for you. So in that sense, as I said, when I moved to Chairperson after traveling a few parts of the world and from Melbourne to Chairperson, and I started doing this program, I realized that this community was fantastic and it got me into this community engagement world. And that world was pretty foreign to me before I started this program. But it opened the doors of opportunities to make new friends, to make new networks, and to be part of this community. So I remember that during those days, and it happened over a period of years. It didn't happen on the first day or first year when I arrived at Chairperson. But in 2014 and 2015, around that time, I reached a point where I used to say this to my friends in Melbourne and other places that, this is my community, and that sense of belonging to Chairperson community was so strong that I really wanted to contribute. And I wanted to give back to my community through my skills or through my experiences or qualifications and anything. I wanted to be part of that decision-making process and have a seat at the table and to be able to contribute. Because I felt very strongly and positively about my community. And I had this sense of pride, which was there. And I just thought that I was not born